Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to ORL Split A as we make our way to round 7 here at the Bahrain short layout. 100% race, our third of the season so far. I'm Yusuf Milkisiro bin Saheld, and joining me, as per usual, is Jacob Alazar Hancock. Jacob, how are you doing this wonderful Sunday evening?
Yeah, pretty well, thank you. Yeah, a little bit tired, but I'm sure this race will pep me up, no doubt about it, because the Bahrain short track is definitely one I'm looking forward to seeing these guys racing around.
Yeah, so before we start talking about the Bahrain short layout, let's take a little look at what happened last time out. Back in round 6 at Brazil, it was Jarno Opmeer who was able to take the win in a damp Brazil, or at least it was damp towards the end of the race. Yoni Tormala picking up a P2 on worn intermediate tyres ahead of Josh Idowu in P3. Felipe Sousa able to claim P4, his best result of the season at his home Grand Prix, ahead of Teyen in 5th. Nubega was able to claim 6th ahead of Ben Sabaconi. Daniela Haddad, Dario Iamullo, or pardon me, yes, Dario Iamullo and Patrick Krutich. But
yeah, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was a crazy race at Brazil, especially with the rain coming down so late, so early on, I should say.
Yeah, it came down just early enough to make it really, really edgy towards the end of the race, whether the drivers were going to be able to make their intermediates work. And honestly, it gave us one of the more thrilling races I've seen in the last year or so, at least, in league racing. It was great fun to watch. And drivers who are at the peak of their performance, just trying to eke out those tires, a whole different challenge that they were faced with. Some of them rose to that challenge. Some of them got super unlucky. Alvaro Carreton picking up a very early puncture when others around him didn't pick up punctures until the very, very end. And some deciding to throw it in and pit altogether. So yeah, there was a whole lot of different decisions to be made, a whole lot of ways the drivers could distinguish themselves. And in the end, of course, Jarno Opmeer came out on top.
Jarno Opmeer did come out on top. And that means some very interesting implications for the Drivers' Championship. Because, as you can see on the top right of your screen, there are 3 points separating the top 4 drivers. Patrick Krutich leading the championship for the first time ahead of Alvaro Carreton and Dani Haddad, with Jarno Opmeer a further 2 points behind. Yoni Tormala as well, making some good headway as well after one of his best results of the season.
Yeah, I mean, how close is that? How close do you want your championship, right? Krutich, Carreton, Haddad, Opmeer, 64, 63, 63, and 61. Daniele Haddad up there, despite not having won a race this season, just shows how back and forth, how close this whole season has been. Yoni Tormala's not out of it yet. If he can build on what was a very positive race in the end in Brazil, we could well see him joining and making it at least a 5-way scrap for the top.
Now, we'll be jumping into qualifying in just a moment, but first, here's a quick advert from our sponsors over at HyperX.
All right, I'm ready.
Let's do this.
Time to farm some dubs. Crap, I got a squad on my right.
I'm running in for backup.
Yo, Ron, he's right there in front of you.
Oh, sorry, guys. It happened again.
Damn. This is the 10th one today.
All right, I'm back.
Someone cover me.
Yeah, I see you. You got him. You got him. You got him. Yes! That's sweet.
We about to win this.
Guys.
HyperX Allen, because it has.
So we are jumping on into qualifying. Short qualifying as per usual, 18 minutes long. And it looks like it will be Dani Haddad who is the first man out on circuit. And I just realized, there you go, Jacob. Now you should be able to see the screen. Let's ride on board with the Racing Point driver as he starts his first hot lap of the night here at the Sakhir short layout. Nice and late onto the brakes, down to first gear. Short shifting up to third on exit as you make your way through turn 2. Now up into turn 3. Make a nice late turn in. Use up all of the track on a corner exit. And just flat through the king of 4 as you make your way down towards turn 5 and back on to the main circuit layout. Fourth gear, carry the speed, let the car out. You don't really need to get all the way over onto the curb on exit completely flat through turn 6. And then turn 7 is always a tricky one. Very easy to miss the turning point, very easy to miss your apex, but Danny Haddad gets it spot on.
Yeah, indeed. He hasn't got every single corner this lap spot on at this very, very short lap here in Bahrain, but it's still looking reasonable enough as he's now going to come up towards the line. And we'll see where he slots into the timing sheets. It's actually going to be to the very top, ahead of Alvaro Carreton and into first for Daniel Haddad.
And I want to take a look at Alessio Di Capua as Jarno Otmir jumps to the top of the standings, but there it is, Alessio Di Capua. This is the kind of pace that we've been missing from Alessio recently. We know how quick he is, you know, 7th, 4th, and 8th in his first 3 races, but in his next set of 3 races, not being able to finish once inside the top 10.
Yeah, Alessio's had a really, really unfortunate run of races in the last few, but this is a very promising start to this qualifying. He's ahead of Jarno Otmir in second. Look who's in third, by the way, Andy, doing a fantastic job. Andreas Dormeyer, who's been consistently scoring points throughout this season thus far in a very, very tough field. Felipe, we were wondering before we went live, we were thinking, is Felipe going to be able to build on the performance that we saw, the incredible performance last time out in Brazil? And that looks like a solid way of doing it. Up in the third already. We're already into the mid-57s for some of these drivers. And we're only really expecting pole to be in the low 57s, so these drivers quite onto the pace pretty rapidly here.
I think the estimation, I was listening to Josh Udo's stream earlier on today, he predicted a 57.3 for the pole lap. We'll see whether that can come through. Currently just a 2/10 shy of it is Alessio Di Capua in the Ferrari. Let's see what Ben Saboconi can pull out, one of the 2 drivers who are yet to complete their laps, and a bit scruffy out of turn 7 for the Renault driver.
Yeah, a little bit scruffy for sure, but he's got time to make it up in this final corner. Again, not quite maybe meeting the apex quite on the nose there for the Hungarian, but we'll see if it matters too much. He comes up towards the line. It does matter a fair amount. Only 2 drivers in the 58s at the moment, one of them being Ben Saboconi himself, the other being his Renault teammate Fabrizio Donoso. So both of them are going to be hoping to improve on those lap times, which currently see them only in 16th and 17th, not where they would like to be.
Yeah, not at all, and we remember Ben Saboconi and Fabrizio Donoso having a bit of a spat between them in during the China Grand Prix, as Tomek Paradzic makes his way into the pits. The first time that we're seeing Tomek out on circuit this season, and we know how quick Tomek is able to be, and if I recall correctly, back in season 12, he was towards the top of the standings with Jarno Otmir. So let's see if he can climb up the standings at the moment. A race win at the current point in time would put you up into the top 10 of the championship.
Yeah, not only that, it would add you to the illustrious club of 5 race winners we have thus far this season. This is round 7, by the way. Only once have we had a repeat race winner, and that was Jarno Otmir, who won both last time out and then 2 times before that. So, yeah, plenty of drivers winning this season shows just how up in the air it is, how close this field is, and especially at the very, very top, how fast so many of these drivers are here. And you always feel going into these races that there are at least one of about 5 or 6 drivers who could take the win on any given occasion. Arsene Kardanov not tending to be one of those drivers, and right now struggling in qualifying in the Red Bull, only down in 19th with a 1 minute point is 8.90, which puts him more than a second off the tail end of the rest of the field. So hopefully he will be able to improve on that.
I just want to point out as well, the lap that Alessio Di Capua put in, that is a stonker of a lap time. We're talking nearly 2/10 quicker than Danny Haddad, and 2/10 at a circuit like Bahrain Short is, you know, nearly 3-4 tenths at some of the longer circuits, or is the equivalent to those 3-4 tenths. You also mentioned, Jacob, that illustrious club of race winners we've had. We've had Danny Bereshne winning, Alvaro Carreton, Patrick Krutage, Jarno Otmir with 2 wins in Japan and Brazil, and Shanaka Clay back in China. We'll see whether we can get a new winner tonight as Arsene Kardanov heads on into the pits.
Alessio is certainly putting his name into the ring there as Alvaro Carreton pops up into third. He would not be a new winner, but Alessio would be. And we'll see what the Ferrari guy is able to do as he will now enter. And then briefly after going in the middle, he's going to exit the final corner as well, using all the road on the exit there of turn 9 and up towards the line. And some improvement, a 57.4 now.
Some improvement, he goes a tenth quicker, and now he's practically 2 tenths ahead of Jarno Otmir. Is Alessio, is this the secret Alessio circuit? We'll have to wait and see. Felipe Sousa is on a lap, the home hero from Brazil. He's actually going to abort his lap as Danny Haddad has just, oh, wow, that rear end kicking out on the exit of turn 3.
On a circuit as short as this, one mistake like that's probably enough to let you abort the lap and go again, because that's a relatively major mistake. That'll lose you a tenth and a half at least. And when there's so few corners in general, and quite a lot of those being, you know, relatively simple corners, if you make one mistake like that, it's going to send your time so much lower than what it could possibly be. So you know that you can just abort it even after only one mistake. Cars all over the road here for Fabrizio Donoso, who parts the Red Sea. He's managed to find his way up into 9th for the time being in the yellow car. But will he continue pushing all the way up to the line, or is he going to head into the pits here as he pushes on the exit of turn 9? And yeah, making straight for the pit lane. So up into 9th for the time being for the Chilean driver.
I think Tomek Poradic as well is pushing, currently sat in P11 on a 57.8. Alessio and Jarno just in a kind of field of their own, and then we're talking about 2.5 tenths separating Alvaro Carreton in P3 all the way down to Pablo Hogla in P17.
Yeah, and Jarno Opmeer, let's not forget, has not gone out a second time. Most of the drivers have gone out and set a second flying lap at this stage. Jarno Opmeer has only been out to the pits once and set that initial 57.6. So he's definitely got it in himself to improve here, as that's Paragis heading back into the pits. Let's take a look at Dario Yamullo, who's already down a tenth and a half after the first couple of sectors, or at least the first sector. He's now coming towards the end of Sector 2, and he's even further down now, 2 tenths down on his previous best time. A lot of drivers struggling to improve on their second runs here in Bahrain, which is not something we're used to seeing. Domenico Lavecce is pretty close to his benchmark time at the moment as he enters the final corner. Had to hacksaw at the wheel a little bit there, counter-steering on the apex, but now smoothly up towards the line. And Domenico will be able to find himself in 8th.
Yep, exact same time as Antonator as well. Josh Udo just improved, put in a 57.695. Same for Zones, jumping up to P3 with a 57.661. So the Shizubu boys out in a force tonight. We'll see whether Zones and Felipe can carry the Scottish Orbs banner high.
Yeah, Zones, a driver we've not seen that much of this season, but every now and again I watch Zones and he does something pretty special, and this might be one of those days. 57.6 right now for the Polish driver. Up in 3rd is Arsene Cardinal, finally getting himself off of the very bottom of the order, but only up into 19th. That's a 58.6, I believe, that he has put himself up to there. Yep, so that's more than a second away from the pole time. Arsene Cardinal struggling a little bit here.
And Felipe is improving by 0.04 of a second, and you might think 0.04 of a second is not a lot, but I'll tell you what, Jacob, 0.04 of a second is enough for him to jump up to B4, and Felipe, but clearly he doesn't think 0.04 is enough, or maybe he made a mistake in the final corner. He heads on into the pits.
Yeah, I got to assume his delta went further positive as he was going around the rest of the lap, that final sector, and therefore decided that he was not going to be able to improve after all. Here's someone who probably can improve, even again, Alessio Di Capua, currently on that 57.4, and we'll see if he can raise the bar even higher here, as he is now into the second sector of this lap. Maybe not quite running, quite making the apex of turn, what would usually be turn 11 there, what I must now recondition myself to understand as turn 5. But a bit of a moment there as well through what is here today, turn 7, and I think he ran wide on the exit and invalidated. Here's Jarno Opmeer then, who's starting his second flying lap of the session.
Can Jarno Opmeer find it 0.2 of a second? It is a big ask, but we are talking about the current ORL champion, the 2-time champion as well. Can he find those extra few tenths? Runs wider through turn 3. Unless that is secretly some OP line, I don't think it is. He's knocked the ERS off, so he's either going to board this lap or go for another lap at the end. Alvaro Carreton is improving by a few hundredths. This might be enough to jump him up to P2. Let's see across the line. 57.608. Alvaro Carreton puts himself provisionally onto the front row of the grid.
And that shows you just how close everyone is. He didn't even improve by 1/10 of a second there, and yet he's up into second position. But none of them have an answer for Alessio Di Capua at this stage. The Italian in the Ferrari is looking really, really solid right now. Here's another Italian in a pinker shade of car in the Racing Point, coming up towards the line. Daniele Haddad has backed out of this one, so he's just pushing again, down 0.8 on that previous attempt. So I'm sure he would have backed out of that, and now is going for a second lap on the same set of tyres. 5 minutes and 40 seconds remaining in this qualifying section as Daniel Haddad messes it up into turn 1, gets too deep. And that might have already ruined this second attempt on this set of tyres. We'll have to see. He's keeping pushing for now as he exits the first sector. And indeed, he's actually up on his time by ever so slight an amount.
I think the weird thing is when you compare this track to, the normal Bahrain circuit, you can run wide through turn 1, Usually you can't run wide through turn 1 because you need to get a good exit through 2 because it leads onto that long straight. But here on the short layout, you can sacrifice that exit speed because it's a very short run down towards turn 3, and maybe that's what Danny Haddad is going for. Either way, 500s up as he makes his way into the final corner. Those 500s will put him pretty much on a par with Jarno Opmeer, maybe even with Fabrizio Donoso. Danny Haddad just misses out, just jumps ahead of his zones as Jarno Opmeer puts in a 4.76, but he's still 200s down on Alessio Di Capua as Josh Doe jumps up to B4.
And Josh Doe's up there. Fabrizio Donoso, as you mentioned, is also now up there in the 57.6s. Jarno Opmeer getting close, but not quite close enough to Alessio Di Capua at the very top of the order. Here's Dario Iamulo in the Alfa Romeo heading towards the line now, and it's got him up 1 position ahead of his Shazoo stablemate in the form of Getone. Both of them having a slightly off-colour qualifying here as Arox just improved to 17th as well. The Norwegian, who had a really solid race in Brazil, be a bit disappointed with the way this qualifying is going thus far. Here's Felipe up towards the line, and he has backed out of it as well. Falconardi is the next one up, and he has, again, backed out of his lap.
Yeah, so I think we've just caught the tail end of some laps coming through. So at the moment, Alessio Di Capua lines up in provisional pole ahead of Jarno Opmeer, Alvaro Caraton in P3, Josh Doe P4, Fabrizio Donoso showing strong here in qualifying at Bahrain. Sure, Danny Haddad, one of your championship contenders, down in P6 ahead of Zone Dominica Leveche, Ben Sabo Cogni and Felipe down in 10th. But the big shock right now is Patrick Krutich is outside of the top 10.
Yeah, him and Parancic, honestly, I'd expect Tomek to be up there inside the top 10 as well. Given what I know of those two drivers, the two poles, I would expect them to be able to get up into that area. But I look up, and there's only a couple of drivers that are in the top 10 that I say I wouldn't usually expect to be there. So it's not like you can say, oh, well, they should be up there, but actually, these people are outperforming where we'd usually expect. These guys are just, they're all where they deserve to be. All of these guys deserve to be in the top 10 in one way, shape, or form. They're all so close right now. Here is Patrick Krutich then, championship leader at the moment in the Mercedes, and again, running a bit deep into turn 1. Maybe that is the favoured line. Didn't quite get as far over to the left-hand side of the track on the entry to turn 3 there, as much as some of the other drivers have been doing, but he is improving on his current best lap time, if only by just over 100th of a second. Committed there through turn 5, lay down throttle, hold it down all the way through turn 6, avoiding that curb. You're getting as close to it as you dare, and now blind apex here of what is now turn 7. Running not too wide on the exits, and just got to wait now for the next corner, which is turns 8 and 9. Braking just before the 50-meter board, not quite making the apex there, not using as much of the road on the exit as some other drivers have been doing either. And now up towards the line, Patrick Krutich does not improve.
No, he does not. What about Ben Sabo Cogni? He started a new lap, and Donato also on a hot lap. Sabo Cogni a few hundreds down at the end of sector 1. I actually want to jump aboard with Fabrizio Donoso, who's just started a new lap, currently sitting down in P5, and he's a 10th shy of Alvaro Caraton in 3rd position.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll see what he is able to do. Running wide through turn 3 there. I wonder if that's an invalidation. You'd expect that to be an invalidation at most circuits, but wouldn't surprise me if the track limits are a little bit more lenient in some parts of the short circuit, particularly that bit which is different to the usual circuit. Fabrizio is still pushing as if he got away with that one, so we will see. As he's now into sector 2, he was a little bit up on his best time through sector 1, I seem to recall, and still actually almost a 10th of a second up now, which is actually quite a lot, given the margins at the very top. He might be pushing to try and challenge Alvaro Caraton's 3rd position right now. Seems to be a little bit balked by the car ahead through that final corner, and we'll see whether that's paid off. It hasn't caused any issues whatsoever, as Fabrizio Donoso improves by over a 10th and goes up into 3rd.
Now, what can Jarno Opmeer do? Fabrizio Donoso's set of laps is pretty much done and dusted here, but Jarno Opmeer still has a chance of pipping Alessio Di Capua and securing another pole. 3 thousandths quicker at the end of Sector 1, and he needs to find just under 200ths of a second, 18 thousandths of a second to be precise, and whether those 3 thousandths will be enough, we'll have to wait and see come the end of the lap. Through turn 7 goes the reigning ORL and F1 esports champion, and he has lost time in the middle sector. Can he find the time here in the final sector? It's just one corner, Jacob, but will that one corner be enough?
That final corner looked pretty sweet to me. Jarno Opmeer up towards the line. Oh, it's such a fine margin, and it's not enough. Jarno Opmeer stays in second there. And now Alessio Di Capua has the chance to solidify his spot at the very top end of the order. Falcon Nardi, Andy, Patrick Krutage, Zones, none of them going to be able to improve at this stage as qualifying is coming to its conclusion here. Fabrizio Donoso is back into the pit, so he'll be starting no higher than fourth. Is Domenico Lovece, as Tomek Prajic also heading back into the pit. Josh Idowu crosses the line, moves himself up into fourth. Nicely done there by the Welshman.
Danny Haddad is up by 1/10 of a second, and that 1/10 would be enough to put him in P6. That was scary for a second on the exit of turn 7. So Danny Haddad, if he can just find a little bit more time, he could be finding himself on the front 2 rows. So much commitment through the final corner for the Racing Point driver, and it's a 57.5, not quite enough, and only enough for P6.
He turned in ever so slightly too early into that final corner for my money. Took a tiny bit too much of the curb. It's a pretty hefty curb through turns 8 and 9. There you go on the inside there. And I think it just unsettled the car a little bit on the exit. Jarno Opmeer is not pushing, so he's not going to be able to challenge. And I think that is that for qualifying. Alessio Di Capua taking pole position from Jarno Opmeer in second.
A fantastic lap from Alessio, and great to see the Italian back in form. He's had a lot of bad luck over the previous few races. And now starting from pole, can he convert that qualifying pace into race pace? And can he take the checkered flag and become, well, I believe it would be his first ever ORL win. We'll have to wait and see come the end of the race. But your top 10, Alessio Di Capua from Jarno Opmeer, Alvaro Caraton, Josh Idowu, Fabrizio Donoso in P5, ahead of the Racing Point pair of Danny Haddad and Domenico Lovece. Felipe Sousa in P8, ahead of Tomek Prajic in P9, and Zones down in P10. Well, I think with that said and done, we're going to be heading into our last ad break before the race. And then we'll be bringing you the full 100% race here at Bahrain, uninterrupted to the very end. Stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we get ready to jump on into the race. Jacob, predictions. It's predictions time. It's always predictions time. Top 3.
Top 3. I can't bet against Jarno Opmeer. He's starting from second. Alessio Di Capua looked to be the best driver in qualifying, but he's had so much bad luck and inconsistency throughout the season. I just cannot bet against Jarno Opmeer. He's my number 1 for me in this race. I'm putting him first. I'm going to say that Alvaro Caraton, he's owed some good luck after the previous race, and he's been on a bit of a bad run recently, but he's up there in qualifying, so I'm going to put him second. And I think I'm going to say Daniel Haddad for third.
Okay, You know, I've got to go with my fellow countryman. I think Alessio Di Capua, he's had a lot of bad luck over the course of the season, and I think all of that bad luck has been building up for this very race, Jacob. I think this is a point where Alessio Di Capua storms out, takes a win. I think he'll do it from Jarno Otmir and Alvaro Caraton in P4.
Okay, well, that's definitely interesting. Actually, having said Daniel Haddad for P3, I'm now thinking maybe I should have said Josh Idowu instead. I do think he's a consistent driver. I don't think he's the sort of driver to throw things away easily. And starting up there in P4 is a very, very solid place. So, yeah, I might say him for third or even second, actually, now I'm thinking about it. But definitely I'm saying Jarno Otmir is going to win.
I think Jarno Otmir, of course, is always going to be the safe bet. You know, reigning champion. There's a reason why he always tends to be winning pretty much race after race after race, whether that be here in ORL, whether that be in F1 esports. But who knows? Who knows what can happen? Bahrain short can be a strange place, and let's see how things pan out as the drivers make their way on to the end of their formation lap. Everyone outside, or everyone in the top 10 starting on softs, everyone outside of the top 10, with the exception of Arsen Kardinov, starting on the medium compound of tyres.
Yeah, Arsen always likes to go a little bit different to everyone else, going for the hard tyres here today. The only driver to do so, Patrick Krutij, our championship leader, will be starting down in P14 in the Mercedes, so he's got a bit of an uphill battle here, and he's not even going to be leading the pack in terms of the medium tyre runners.
Azarox, the final driver on the grid, lines up into his position. Alessio Di Capua will be starting from pole ahead of Jarno Otmir. And we have 5 red lights, and the revs will rise here at Bahrain. And we are underway. It looks to have been a really good start from Jarno Otmir. And Alessio Di Capua can't even move across the Mercedes driver as Jarno Otmir goes down the inside into turn 1. The Ferrari tries to hold it around the outside, but Jarno Otmir leads from turn 1 here at the Bahrain short circuit. Alvaro Caraton holds on to P3 ahead of Fabrizio Donoso and Joshua Idowu down in P5. We have a yellow flag out, but no safety car just yet. Jarno Otmir then leads the way, and as a result, will find himself leading the championship as well provisionally.
Get owned as the driver who fell down to the very back of the field. I assume he span round. He's 7 seconds off the back of Falconardi there. Patrick Krutij has had a great start. I said just before the race started that he didn't have the benefit of leading the medium tyre runners. Well, now he does. He's up into 11th already. So a rocket start from him, and a great start, of course, from Jarno Otmir. What did I tell you about never betting against the Dutchman? He puts himself up into first, where he will surely feel he should have been in qualifying. Takes the fastest lap of the race, of course, on this first one. However, here comes Alessio Di Capua, who's not messing around, not waiting around, wants to make the move as quickly as he possibly can, sends it up the inside, and that is easy as you like. Jarno Otmir not really fighting that one back, and Alessio Di Capua reclaims his first place.
And there we go, Alessio Di Capua back into the lead of the race. But I tell you what, Tomek Poradic was very close to Felipe, who we saw desyncing and really dropping down. The order timing sheets are going somewhat crazy right now. Alessio Di Capua still leads. You can see that in the corner of your screen from Jarno Otmir. We'll have to keep an eye on whether there'll be any changes to the lead battle in the upcoming laps.
Indeed, yeah, but a little bit of battling going on between the medium tyre runners at this stage, causing them to fall a little bit further away from the guys on the softs, of course. The pace of those soft tyres will be better at this stage of the race. Here's Pablo Joglar taking a look at Andy, who has had a relatively poor start to this race in the Ferrari. He might be able to defend around the outside, though, of the final corner. You'll get a better run onto the straight. Andy will just about be able to pick up the slipstream from the car ahead as well. Though Pablo Joglar doesn't look like he's done with this. They might still be battling as they enter turn 1. Joglar diving up the inside there. This is a battle for only P14 at this stage, but who knows where it will be once everyone has come into pit. But for now, Andy is holding it back unless Joglar sending it deep up the inside of 3 there, and he can't make it stick.
And we were talking about how turn 3 will be one of the prime overtaking opportunities. It's almost similar to, is it turn 15 at USA, the double left-hander that tightens. You just want to take a really wide entry line for your racing line, and it just leaves so much space up the inside that you just dived. That's exactly what Pablo Joglar went for, but unsuccessful in it. Tomek Poradic is still a couple of tenths behind Felipe. We've got Zones hot on his heels, and Alessio Di Capo are starting to pull a small gap to Jarno Opmeer. Whether he can do that consistently and pull it to over a second is slightly more unlikely, but it's one that we will have to wait and see.
I seem to remember this time last week talking about Josh Adowu leading the race, building a gap to Jarno Opmeer. And we thought, oh, has he got him here? And then no, of course he hadn't. Jarno Opmeer was able to pull it off in the end. But nevertheless, it is positive, certainly for Alessio, that after passing Jarno on the end of the first lap, he has been able to retain that first position ahead of the Dutchman in the Mercedes. So he'll definitely be feeling good about it for now.
Something else I want to bring up as well is that the drivers on the medium compound of tyres, currently being led by Patrick Krukic and Dario Iamullo, are within a second of Zones and Tomek Paradish, who are at the back end of this soft tyre train. So we don't know how the strategies will play out, but if the new softs are that much quicker than the old mediums, or once the likes of Patrick Krukic and Dario Iamullo do pit, they could be finding themselves in contention for some big points here tonight.
Really interesting thing to see there. Alvaro Carton getting out of the slipstream of Jarno Opmeer down the straight. Now, I doubt that that's engine temperatures. I'd be surprised, but I suppose it could be. He's looking for some clean air down the straight regardless. Obviously, he's not planning on making a move on Jarno Opmeer anytime soon. You can see him doing it again there. Just going for a gasp of clean air before getting back in the slipstream of the Mercedes driver. Now, I wonder if that's going to help a little bit with tyre temperature even.
Yeah, I do wonder. I think the intricacies of the game in that regard are slightly beyond me, but I think you are right. It does help with regards to engine cooling and possibly tyre cooling as well. Yeah, the Bahrain short layout. I mean, you do miss the effective S's in sector, or at the end of sector 1, start of sector 2. So I wouldn't have thought that tyre wear would be a particular issue, but we are talking about a 100% race, so being able to preserve those tyres will be something rather critical.
Yeah, and even there, Jarno Opmeer went out to get a bit of clean air himself, and Alvaro Carton, who was already out, had to dive back into the regular line to avoid the dirty air coming off the back of Jarno Opmeer. So definitely Alvaro being very cautious with the temperatures, whether it be engine or tyre temperature. Of course, if you run a lot of rich mix, you can heat up your engine pretty significantly. More cooling going on there for Fabrizio Donoso as well. So this is clearly going to be playing out to be a rather tactical race here. Maybe a bit of a race of attrition in terms of temperatures. Some drivers, if they're not going to be taking as much care with their temperatures, might well find themselves sitting ducks in the next few laps.
Now, I'm also just looking slightly further down the order as well at Zones. He had made a mistake and he had fallen to about 1.2 seconds behind Tomek Paradish in the McLaren. And now he's clawing back into within a second. And this might mean that Patrick Krukic is unable to match the pace and might fall out of a second and might lose the DRS to the two poles in the process.
We will see. I mean, I was surprised by how quickly the Mercedes medium tyre runners, as that's Matthias Vipic having a go at Arox there. Arox started at the very back of the grid, but has found his way up to 16th for now. The AlphaTauris both having decent starts to this race. And staying ahead of the Polish Matthias Vipic for the time being, Falcon Nardi down in 18th. Pretty disappointed to be down there at this stage, I would imagine. He'll be hoping to get past Matthias Vipic as well.
Yeah, it's not been a great race so far for Bernardo Perez, also known as Falcon Nardi, sitting down in P18 and well out of the points. That being said, he definitely looks quicker than the Red Bull. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds a way through in the next lap or so.
Should have the opportunity some point soon here. At the moment, though, huge DRS train effectively forming. Zones being the main break in that train, along with Arox as well. Here's Falcon Nardi. Matthias Vipic must have used a lot of his overtake trying to get past the Norwegian up ahead on the previous lap. Wasn't able to do so, and as a result finds himself vulnerable to the Spaniard behind. Here is Bernardo Perez up the inside. Should be able to shut the door through turn 2. He tries to do so. The Red Bull kept his nose in there, but in the end, it is Falcon Nardi who gains the position. Matthias Vipic falling down into 18th. He won't be very happy with that, no doubt about it. Here's Daniele Haddad, currently sitting in 6th with his teammate Domenico Levecce down in 7th, just behind him. Both of them having a solid race thus far. Not really much change for them since they lined up on the grid, but he is looking very, very close behind Josh Adowu right now.
Yeah, and it's just a case of what we're seeing right now, good old DRS train forming, and it was very critical that Alessio Di Capua got back past Jano Otmir before the DRS was enabled. Danny Haddad looking very close to Josh Idowu, and might look for a move this time round. Does Josh go defensive? No, he does not, and the Italian will dive it down the inside, and he outbreaks himself. He outbreaks himself massively, runs into the side of Fabrizio Donoso, and now he's going to fall down the order. We're only 9 laps in. He's going to have to pit and surely put on hard tyres to try to squeeze it to the end of the race. But a huge mistake from such an experienced driver like Danny Haddad, and he will be kicking himself for it.
Daniele, how has that happened? He was so late on the brakes, far too late. You could see when he was pulling out the line he was taking, he was far too far to the inside. You could tell he was desperately trying to avoid something, give himself a little bit more space before hitting another driver. What's happened here to Tomek Paradzic? He's run wide. Onto the gravel he goes, just understeering clean off the circuit through turn 7. It's going to let Daniele Haddad back through in the wounded Racing Point. So as a result, Daniele's only actually lost 2 positions as a result of that, but the front wing damage is the bigger headline for him. He does stay out, remaining on circuit. But yeah, big mistake there from the Italian, just far too late on the brakes.
Surely there is no way that Danny Haddad can stay within a second of Felipe. Look at the state of that front left wing. That has to be orange. Surely.
Yeah, but the most limited corners, the left side of the wing, I'm not sure it's going to lose you that much through some of these corners, especially when it's not, you know, the whole front wing missing. This corner in particular would be a huge struggle if he was missing the right-hand end plate, but he's not, so that corner's a little bit easier than it would be otherwise. Here he'll struggle a bit, but I think the car should have enough downforce about them that he can just lift off a tiny bit through there and still maintain a reasonable time, and then he'll just be able to pull back up along these straights here in this DRS train. So it might not be as bad as it looks for Daniele Haddad right now.
Well, he's just fallen to over a second behind Felipe Sousa. Will stay out. Good news if actually we've got a move happening up ahead. Jano Otmir goes down the inside of Alessio Di Capua. He has decided that this is a lap he wants to pull the trigger, the start of a lap 11. And Jano Otmir reclaims the lead here at the Sakhir short circuit. Alvaro Caraton just in the background waiting patiently for an opportunity. Now the question is, Jacob, can Jano pull away from the Italian?
Yeah, I wonder if Jano's heading into the pits at the end of this lap as well. It's quite often you see that a driver will make the move just before they get to the pit stop phase. The medium tyres do seem to be working a little bit better than the softs now. Zones has lost out to both Patrick Krutic and Dario Iamullo. Both Patrick Krutic and Dario are up there now with Tomek Paradzic. Mateusz Vipic has retired from the race. He was running down towards the very bottom of the order, and he decides this race is not for him any longer. Alessio Di Capua not that close behind Jano Otmir right now, but both do stay out on circuit. No one heading into the pits quite yet, apart from the stricken Daniele Haddad, who's had enough of that damaged front wing.
Yeah, let's see if this is going to be mediums or hard. Surely it has to be hards in the background. You can see Ben Sabaconi moving down the inside of zones. Will sweep back to the outside to take his racing line, and that's Ben Sabaconi up to P11. So Patrick Krutic and Dario Iamullo, they're having a really good race. They're within a second of Tomek Paradzic. They're on the medium tyres, and I think they're in a very good position.
Yeah, for sure. Tomek Paradzic as well. He's going to be a little bit vulnerable, given that he doesn't have DRS to Felipe ahead. And then same story for Felipe not having DRS to Domenico Lovecce up ahead as well. All part of that definitely caused by the sort of disruption through the field that was came in the form of Daniele Haddad's Racing Point and the incident he had in the first corner. So, both of them are going to struggle to keep these medium tyre runners at bay, which is fantastic news for Krutic and Iamullo, and of course for Ben Sabaconi as well. Is that into the pits up there? Is that Fabrizio Donoso heading into the pits there? As long as Tomek Paradzic as well.
So, 2 of the soft tyre runners deciding that lap 12 is the lap that they want to pit. Medium tyres going on. Is this a 2-stop strategy coming through? Danny Haddad also putting on those medium tyres. So interesting that we're starting to now see the strategies that are playing out as Zones runs wide and Pablo Hogla not quite close enough to be able to capitalize on the mistake from the Alfa Romeo driver.
Yeah, we saw Fabrizio Donoso doing that in qualifying, running wide through there, and it sort of worked out well enough for him. so I don't think Zones would have lost too much with that sort of minor mistake. I don't think he would have necessarily even picked up a warning there. We are yet to see any time penalties on the board, which is very impressive from all these drivers. Of course, not so many corners around here where it's possible to corner cut, but there are still a couple, and these drivers are keeping it very, very clean out there. Patrick Krutic now has 2 seconds worth of clean air before he gets to Felipe, and then another 2 seconds ahead of Felipe once they cruise up and pass the Haas driver, which they will almost certainly do soon enough with those medium tyres working better than the softs. You can see Zones really struggling on his as he made a bit of a hash of the final corner, and that's going to allow Pablo Joglar up the inside. However, Zones will be able to battle it back here. The Alfa Romeo's not done yet, but the Alfa Tauri is the winner in that one and moves up into 10th. They'll be looking to chase down Benstav Okonyi, who does not have DRS on the cars ahead.
Tell you what, so Pablo Joglar almost went practically sideways on the exit of turn 2 as he tried to get the move done on Zones. Either way, Joglar up into P10, and Dario Yamullo half a second behind Patrick Krutic, but I just want to keep an eye on the gap between Patrick Krutic and Felipe Sousa. It's coming at 2 seconds. We'll have to see whether that gap increases or decreases as Alvaro Carreton just having a little look here towards the pit lane, in the end deciding against it. No one else went for the pits. Domenico Levecce now down the inside of Josh Ido. We'll get the move done fairly comfortably down the inside. Textbook stuff.
Yeah, nicely done by Domenico Levecce. Josh Ido was surprised to see him being overtaken at this stage, but we did, of course, see Daniele Haddad going for a move on him as well a few laps ago. That ended rather poorly for that racing point, but this one is having a better time of it. Zones is losing yet more positions as both Andy and Arox have now made their way past the Polish driver, who's really, really struggling at this stage of the race on those soft tyres. No one else on the softs is having that much trouble, though. Patrick Krutic has only closed down Felipe by about 0.4 of a second, and Felipe all the while is losing time to the front 5. So these guys, these front 5 cars still have better pace than the front runners of the medium tyre guys.
Definitely seems to be the case. Fabrizio Donoso as well, having pitted recently on the fresh set of medium tyres, and set a new fast lap of the race. We'll see whether he can keep up that form, as Alessio having a think about making a move on Jarno Opmeer. Runs a bit wide, outbraking himself potentially due to the extra overspeed, or due to the overspeed, I should say, from the DRS. Slotting in behind Jarno Opmeer now. He is close, and I do think if the Ferrari driver wanted, he could potentially use some ERS and go for the move. He has a little think about the inside down into turn 5, but decides against it in the end.
He's letting Jarno know that he is going to be trying to come past sooner rather than later, unless the Dutchman pulls out something special in this final sector. He's given him the warning. Can Jarno Opmeer respond, or is this going to be Alessio Di Capua simply cruising past and back up in a first again? The first place in this race has traded multiple times thus far. It might well trade again when we head down towards turn 1 in just a moment's time. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Donoso, the leader of the guys who has pitted, has moved ahead of Ghetto, so he's making progress a little bit through the field at this stage. Here comes Alessio Di Capua, though, all over the rear wing of Jarno Opmeer, and in fact, no longer even seeing the rear wing of the Mercedes, as he comfortably breezes past down the straight, using that overtake, using that DRS. Jarno Opmeer perfectly willing to let the Ferrari back into first for now.
We've still got a while to go before these guys pit. I think the likes of Tomek Porodisha, Danny Haddad, and Fabrizio Donoso going for that 2-stop strategy. I wouldn't be surprised if the likes of, well, the remaining soft tyre runners try to stick it out until about lap 22 or so before pitting for a set of medium tyres to go to the end, or maybe lap 20 and take a set of hards 38 laps to the end of the race.
Josh Ido is becoming a bit of a straggler with this front pack right now. He's still within DRS, but he's falling a little bit further and further away from Domenico Levecce lap after lap ever since the Italian got past. And the Italian himself isn't exactly all over the rear wing of Alvaro Carreton, who just heads into the pits right now. It's Felipe heading into the pits as well. That's going to allow Patrick Krutic and Dario Yamullo some more free air on their charge on the medium tyres. Now that the soft tyre guys are pitting, they will have plenty of fresh air to keep pushing and keep extracting the maximum out of those yellow-walled medium tyres. Alvaro, Josh Ido, Felipe all came into the pits. Felipe's onto hards, the other two electing for mediums instead.
So you'd have to think that Felipe Sousa's what's happened to Tomek Porodic. I have no idea.
It was in the pits. He went back into the pits. He showed it in the pits very, very briefly, and then has just retired from the race. Don't know if he had front wing damage or if he's just decided he was not in a position to score any decent points. But either way, he will not be making the end of this race.
Massive shame for the pole. The young pole in his first race of season 14. Does Alessio pit? Does Giano pit? No, neither driver looking for the undercut. They're just going to stick it out there, which means that when they do pit, be almost certain that Alvaro Caraton and Josh Idowu would have been able to jump ahead. Domenico Lavecce is into the pit. So Patrick Krutic is now up to P3. And let's see whether Patrick can actually close in on his Mercedes teammate of Jarno Otmar, currently 6.7 seconds behind. And don't forget, Jarno's got DRS from Alessio ahead, and Patrick does not have DRS from anyone ahead.
Yeah, but you'd expect the tyre differential would be sufficient right now for Patrick to be getting closer. If not, then I'm not sure the strategy is going to work all that well. Domenico Lavecce coming out of the pits is ahead of Josh Idowu, but not by a whole lot further up. That's Arsene Kardinov falling prey to Alvaro Caraton on the much fresher medium tyres. He tries to go for a switchback through turn 3. Audacious stuff from the Russian, but he just does not have the grip to fight with the Spaniard, and Alvaro Caraton solidifies his grip on P12. Domenico Lavecce has been able to keep Josh Idowu at bay by the look of things. Still pretty close. McLaren in very close attendance with the racing point there, but Domenico should be able to pick up DRS from Arsene Kardinov up ahead. And that should be enough to keep him protected from the car behind. Fabrizio Donoso picking up a 3-second time penalty. He's made a lot of progress with his undercut. Ahead now of Alvaro Caraton and up into 10th. So he is still the leader of those who have pitted, as Alvaro will now be blasting past Get-Owned on the straight.
Yeah, but Fabrizio Donoso had about a 5-lap undercut, and Alvaro Caraton, after pitting, has come out within a second of Fabrizio. So this has turned out really badly for the Renault driver, in my opinion. Let's see, though, what he can do. We don't know what the tyre wear is like. Domenico Lavecce has just a loss of position to Josh Idowu. He is on the hard tyres relative to the Welshman's mediums. So we're probably expecting at around about that lap 45 mark, maybe those hards will start to become quicker than the yellow walled medium tyres.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see Domenico Lavecce and Felipe going on a different route to everyone else, who all have decided for those medium tyres. Alessio Di Capua is heading into the pit, so we'll see exactly what decision the Italian is going to make. He goes for the medium tyres as well. So either he reckons those mediums can make it to the end, or he's going for another pit stop in this one. Bernardo Perez also into the pits, as well as Dario Iamulo making it past Patrick Krutic there. Patrick, I was about to say, was not getting any closer to his teammate Jarno Otmar. Maybe Dario Iamulo feels that he can, and as a result, he's made his way past the Polish driver. Alvaro Caraton, meanwhile, has dispatched Fabrizio Donoso, and he's up into 8th.
Yeah, and Alessio Di Capua has just come out in P11, right behind Get-Owned. So a couple of seconds between himself and Alvaro Caraton. So Alessio Di Capua staying out for those 2 extra laps has really cost him time. And here comes Alessio down the inside of Get-Owned into turn 5. Will get the job done. Textbook stuff from the Italian. And now next up is Fabrizio Donoso. And then he should be within a second of the Spaniard, of Alvaro Caraton. With those 2-lap fresh and medium tyres, he'll be hoping that his slightly better tyre wear come the end of the race will be enough for him to find a way past the Spaniard.
Jarno Otmar might be in a spot to bother here. He's lost about 7-8 tenths of a second to Dario Iamulo ever since Dario got past Patrick Krutic. So he has not got the pace out there at the very front right now. We've already seen what happened to Alessio Di Capua. He got undercut by 2 drivers and had to get past Get-Owned, as well as Josh Idowu has done the same and gotten past the Austrian driver. But Jarno Otmar, if he pits now, I'm concerned he's going to be behind Domenico Lavecce even.
He might very well be, but on fresh medium tyres to Domenico Lavecce, it's hard. He should be able to make a quicker work of the Italian, as well as Get-Owned in the Haas, but then getting past the likes of Josh Idowu, Alessio Di Capua, and maybe even Fabrizio Donoso on the slightly more worn medium tyres might be difficult even for the Predator himself.
Yeah, he's the only one still out there on the softs, apart from Bernardo Perez, who's only just gone onto the softs off of his medium tyres. Currently down in 16th for him. Jarno Otmar leading the way, but Dario Iamulo is still scything into that gap between himself and the race leader. So Jarno Otmar, I think, is losing quite a bit of time at this phase of the race.
And it all comes down to what kind of strategies are we expecting to see. Like, we're assuming it's a one-stop strategy for pretty much every driver. For Fabrizio Donoso, we don't know what we're expecting to see. As in the background, we see Domenico Lavecchia going down the inside of Gedone. Will move up into P12. Jarno Opmeer still out on circuit, still yet to pick. Look how close Fabrizio Donoso is to Alvaro Caraton, as I think Alvaro got through a few laps ago, but has been unable to pull over a second ahead of Fabrizio.
It's interesting that Fabrizio is able to keep so close to him despite the 5-lap differential in the age of their tyres. The fact that he's still giving Alvaro Caraton something to worry about in his mirrors shows that 9-lap-old mediums, not too different to 4-lap-old mediums, and those tyres are hanging on pretty nicely. Dario Yamulo still getting closer to Jarno Opmeer, though Jarno had been able to stem the bleeding just a little bit, but now has come into the pits finally, and it's going to be medium tyres for the Mercedes as well. No hard tyre shenanigans from him, and now got to expect he's going to try to make it to the end of the race after doing 24 laps on soft tyres. Surely he's going to try and get to the very end on these mediums, and he wants to give himself plenty of margin when it comes to the end of the race. However, he has sacrificed an awful lot of track position for it, as that was Alessio Di Capua further up there, getting past Fabrizio Donoso. So Alessio is going to start harassing Caraton now as well, with a bit of a difference between their tyres. But Jarno Opmeer down into 13th behind Getone, Domenico Lavecchia, Josh Idowu, Fabrizio Donoso. A lot of very quick drivers he's got to find his way past. Getone shouldn't be too difficult given the age difference in their tyres.
If Alessio Di Capua and Alvaro Caraton can work together, they might be able to pull over a second to Fabrizio Donoso. It might be possible, considering that Fabrizio is on much more worn medium tyres. And if they can do that, then even if Jarno Opmeer is able to find a way to move the rest of the traffic, if he's over a second behind, it'll be very difficult for him to close into two drivers working together with the DRS to pull away from the Dutchman.
I don't know. I mean, there's potentially that line of thought. Alessio Di Capua is probably not thinking it right now, as he's very, very close behind Alvaro Caraton and thinking about making a move down into turn 1. He's going to try and make an aggressive shape at least, but he can't quite get alongside the Spaniard, and Alvaro holds on to 7th for now. The Italian having to make do with 8th. Fabrizio Donoso in 9th, with Josh Idowu still close behind in 10th. Every time there's been a train of the fastest drivers, Josh Idowu has been at the back of it, but he's always been a part of it, which is the most important thing. Domenico Lavecchia falling a little bit away from these guys with those hard tyres. That's to be expected, but he's doing an all right job, in all honesty, to only be 1.2 seconds behind them right now. Getone hasn't quite dropped out of DRS of Domenico either, so that's going to make Jarno Opmeer's job of getting past Getone a little bit more difficult, but I still don't think it's going to be very tough at all for the Flying Dutchman. But when he gets up to the back of Josh Idowu, there's an awfully large DRS train he's going to have to contend with. As here is Dario Yamulo getting passed once again by Patrick Crucic, Pablo Hoglar also getting past Ben Sabaconyi.
Yeah, so a couple of moves happening further up the order. Jarno Opmeer has just got past Getone as well, and it's now 1.5 seconds behind as Alessio Di Capua has pulled off the move on Alvaro Caraton on those fresher medium tyres. Now the question is, can he pull the trigger? Can he pull away? Because Jarno Opmeer is into clear air and will be closing in onto Domenico Lavecchia, who is in this group of cars that leads all the way up to Alessio Di Capua. You can see Jarno Opmeer in the corner of your screen slowly closing in.
There's a million things to keep track of in this race, but if you want another one, keep an eye on Falconardi's pace on those soft tyres relative to the cars ahead of him. That should give us a bit of an indication, just a little bit of an indication, of what it's going to be like when Crucic, Dario Yamulo head into the pits from their rather now aged medium tyres to strap on what will probably be a fresh set of soft at the moment. Nardi actually losing time to the medium tyre runners ahead, even though his softs are only 4 laps old, so the Williams driver not finding as much pace on the softest compound as he might have been expecting. Jarno Opmeer sets the fastest lap of the race as he's closing down Domenico Lavecchia. But bad news for Jarno is the fact that the Italian in the racing point in 11th has closed back up to Josh Idowu enough to be within DRS range of the McLaren.
Why am I starting to hear boss music, Jacob? But Jarno Opmeer has a challenge on his hands. He needs to get past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drivers to claim the effective race lead. And don't forget, Patrick Crucic and Dario Yamulo coming up the pits. I think they're going to be somewhere around Falconardi and Felipe Sousa. And then with those fresh soft tyres, well, I'm going to assume that they're going to be gaining over half a second a lap. And they're going to be pitting at around about lap 35 to do 23 laps to the end. So we'll have to see how those softs do handle, because they could very well find themselves in the top 5 at come the final few laps of the race.
Indeed, they could. It's interesting. Jarno Opmeer, Alessio Di Caprio, those were our two who were battling for the race lead. Now, Jarno Opmeer is here battling with Domenico Lavecce, while Alessio Di Caprio is 5 cars up the road. Jarno will now dispatch the Italian into turn 1, so that's 1 off the list for the Dutchman. Now, he sets his sights on Josh Idowu up ahead. 3 lap-old mediums up against 9 lap-old mediums, but Josh will have DRS and a slipstream from Fabrizio Donoso up ahead as well. If Opmeer can get past Idowu, he should make relatively light work of Donoso, though, because of the fact that Donoso's tyres are at this stage 14 laps old. But nevertheless, it's still Jarno Opmeer. It's going to have to be very, very beneficial to him at the end of this stint for his overcut to have paid off here. He's lost a lot to Alessio Di Caprio at this stage.
Yeah, he has to feel that those softs are going to be, or those mediums will be much better come the end of the race, and already within a few tenths of Josh Idowu. How quickly can he get past the Welshman? Josh Idowu down to about 30% ERS, and Jarno Opmeer on about 55% ERS. So let's see how this does pan out, but from Alessio Di Caprio to Jarno Opmeer, these are 5 of the original top 6 from the start of the race. The only man who's missing is Danny Haddad, who sadly lost part of his front wing when he tried to go down the inside of Alvaro Carreton, only to hit Alessio Di Caprio, lose his front wing, and it cost him a whole bunch of time in the pits, and as a result he was forced to pit, well, probably about 5-6 laps earlier than he would have liked, maybe 10 laps earlier, and now languishing down in the heat 14.
So we're now beyond halfway in this race, and several drivers are still yet to pit from their medium tyres. Arox, Andy, Pablo Hoglard, Ben Sabuconi, Dario Yamullo, and Patrick Krutij are all still out there on the tyres they started this race on. Interestingly, Austin Cardinal, who started on the hards, pitted to mediums 8 laps to go, so hards to mediums was his strategy, and it's not working out well for him at all at this stage of the race. Jarno Opmeer not making too much of an imprint on Josh Idowu right now. But of course, the biggest difference in the tyre wear should come towards the end of the stint and not right now.
Yeah, and it's always the case with pretty much every compound of tyres. If there is a discrepancy in the number of laps done, the first few laps when you've got, pure fresh tyres, you'll be significantly quicker than the other driver. Then after you've done a couple of laps and you used up that initial kind of burst of rubber, let's say, you'll start to lose pace, or you won't be gaining as much time. You might gain a few hundredths, but overall it'll be the same until you get right towards the end, and your tyres will be on about 50-60%, and the other driver will be on about 70 to 80% tyre wear.
Yeah, so that's what Jarno Opmeer is waiting for right now, although he is now actually approaching the rear end of Josh Idowu a little bit quicker, within half a second of the McLaren driver, and if he gets an opportunity to blast on by, he won't say no. He won't say, no, I'm waiting for when we've got to 70% tyre wear. He will take the position right now if he can, but it's not going to be that easy. The Welshman up ahead, a very capable driver, I think currently leading the way in the F1 Esports Challenger Series standings, and with the F1 Esports Pro Series champion just behind, he'll want to prove himself and keep him in 11th for the time being, keep him at arm's length, but Idowu is playing with fire a little bit here, almost falling out of DRS range of Fabrizio Donoso up ahead, which you really shouldn't be considering the differential in their tyre wear.
Now, I just want to point out as well, Jarno Opmeer did 25 laps on those softs that he started the race on and he qualified on, which means that for the likes of Patrick Krutij and Dario Yamullo, they are now entering into that pit window. For the majority of other drivers, they did about 20 laps on those medium tyres, or they did 20 laps on those soft tyres, and he is into the pits. So the majority of drivers did 20 laps on their soft tyres, which would mean that we're probably going to be expecting to see our last pit stop from the medium tyre runners at around about lap 36, I'd say.
Yeah, and the first of those guys is now coming to the pits in the form of Andy, as you mentioned, onto soft tyres he goes towards the end of this race. Dario Yamullo just got past Patrick Krutij into turn 1, I believe, and has reasserted himself back up at the very top of the order for the time being, leading the way for the Contra strategists right now. Krutij will have something to say about that, I'm sure, by the time they come into the pit lane. He'd love to enter the pit to head. I think, because that could well be critical. But for the time being, he is behind the Alfa Romeo. They've been trading places back and forth a fair amount thus far this race. Jana Watmir, meanwhile, very, very close behind Yoshido with his teammate Patrick Krutaj. Hits from second, and he'll go on to soft tyres to the end of this race. Pablo Joglar following him into the pits as well. Jana Watmir looks like he's having a go at Yoshido, I think, out on the circuit. Here we go. Up the inside goes the Mercedes, and the McLaren can't really fight back. So Jana Watmir, credit where credit's due, is making these fresh and medium tyres work for him right now, at least.
Good stuff from Jana Watmir. He is up into effective P4 in the race. Fabrizio Donoso is next, and Fabrizio should be easier pickings than Yoshido was with 5-lap older medium tyres. Let's also take a look, where did Patrick Krutaj come out? So he came out a second behind Felipe and then Danny Haddad. So Patrick should be able to make his way past those two fairly quickly, and then he will be finding himself about 12 seconds behind this group of cars. So 12 seconds with about 25 laps to go. He needs to be gaining half a second on these guys.
Half a second, it's quite a lot of time to gain on the likes of Alessio Di Caprio, Alvaro Caraton, Fabrizio Donoso, Jana Watmir, but you never know. We'll see whether he's able to do it or not. Ben Sabuconi and Dario Yamulo, the next two to come into the pit. So Dario responding to the attempted undercut here from Patrick Krutaj, but I doubt he's going to be able to respond well enough. However, Krutaj is kind of bottled up right now behind Felipe and Daniele Haddad, who are actually battling out there on circuit right now. Haddad actually falling behind Felipe while the pit stops all shake out as well. However, Krutaj did just about get enough time in clean air to undercut Dario Yamulo and get up into 11th. Yamulo coming out of the pits down in 12th, but ahead of Andy, who himself has been able to undercut both Joglar and Ben Sabuconi.
Dario Yamulo on those cold tyres, on those, let's say, raw tyres, just struggling a bit, losing the back end through turn 3 as he desperately tried to stay within a second, and as a result, it cost him being within that second. And at the same time, we're seeing Jana Watmir getting very close to the back of Fabrizio Donoso. Arox is diving on into the pits, but Jana Watmir will take this fairly simply. I don't think Fabrizio Donoso will put up too much of a fight. Jana Watmir moves up to P3.
What's a DRS train, you ask? Well, it means that no one's able to overtake each other because they all have DRS, apart from if your name's Jana Watmir and you can just drive clean on past people. Is Daniel Haddad trying to battle back against Patrick Krutaj? 3 wide for a moment there, down towards turn 1 around the outside. Sweeps Krutaj on those soft tyres, fresher, softer rubber. Means that he can get past Felipe, and now Daniel Haddad looking to battle back against Felipe as well. That position change between those two a lap ago, and now Haddad reclaims it. Dario Yamulo going to take advantage of Felipe, who's all out of sorts for this half lap at least. The Alfa Romeo sneaking up the inside of the Haas and up into 10th. Needs to get past Daniel Haddad very, very quickly, though, because he cannot afford to let Patrick Krutaj drop him from his DRS. So he needs to get past Daniele at the first time of asking here.
Yep, and I'm sure he'll do it fairly quickly as we're seeing Alvaro Caraton. What? Is that front wing damage?
No. I think they're just pitting. I think it's a strategic decision from these guys to head into the pits. They're pulling off a 2-stop strategy. They were earlier onto the mediums, and it's soft tyres now for Caraton for the end of this race. Same for Fabrizio Donoso Delgado as well. Dario Yamulo now sending it up the inside of Daniele Haddad and up into 7th. Critically for him, he has not let Patrick Krutaj get away from him, so he can continue his battle with his fellow contra-strategist. Jana Watmir now has a bit of clean air and 1.4 seconds up to his old sparring partner, Alessio Di Capua. Josh Idowu just falling outside of DRS of Jana Watmir now.
This is huge for Alessio. He's over a second ahead of Jana Watmir. Can he keep it that way? And judging by how the time is dropping, I guess the answer is no. But Alvaro Caraton and Fabrizio Donoso, they're on fresh soft tyres. And all of the guys ahead of them are on fresh soft tyres as well. But it's only by a couple of laps. Patrick Krutaj and Dario Yamulo have well and truly got this P5, P6 at the very least in the bag. And as Falconardi, aka Bernardo Perez, jumps into the pits, Patrick Krutaj is now up to P5. Domenico Leveche will be easy pickings. This could be a P1, P3 for Mercedes here.
It could well be. Felipe, they're getting back past Daniele Haddad. By the way, last time round, Jarno Otmir set the fastest lap of the race on 12-lap-old medium tyres. Give that man clean air and he can make use of it no matter what. Several drivers have been out there for a few laps on fresh, soft tyres, and yet none of them as fast as Jarno Otmir on those rather second-hand mediums. So the Dutchman still flying out there right now as Andy gets past Daniele Haddad as well. Daniele is 24-lap-old mediums in rather worse shape, and he is struggling. He needs to come into the pits soon. Strap on another set of softs to go to the end of the race. His race has been heavily compromised by that rather ill-judged move into turn one. He was trying to take Josh Idowu and managed to go to the side of the car ahead of him, which was Fabrizio Donoso. So that would have been a bit of a rather rude awakening there for the Chilean, and definitely not what Daniele Haddad was looking for. He doesn't dive into the pits now, though, and as a result, Pablo Joglar is going to gobble him up as well.
Pablo Joglar moves up a position up ahead. You can see Felipe losing a position to Andy, and that's going to be Joglar looking down the inside. Andy will leave room, but Pablo Joglar moves up to PA, and he's really flying, is Pablo Joglar right now, as Danny Haddad gets a seemingly good run on Felipe Sousa. Is it going to be enough for him to find a way through? No, just too far back. So Jarno Otmir now is 6/10 behind, as that was Pablo Joglar sending it down the inside of Andy. I didn't quite see that one happening, but good move then from Pablo Joglar, who's wasting no time at all.
Then Sakhir now very close behind Daniele Haddad as well. Daniele and Felipe are both kind of sitting ducks at this stage. They're battling each other over pride, but I don't think any of them are going to be able to score points in this one. Ben Sakhir making my point here, underlining it, putting an exclamation mark after it as he comfortably sails on past Daniele Haddad, who will now eventually dive into the pits and get rid of those very old medium tyres. Felipe is going to be struggling on his 20-lap-old hards as well, you'd have to imagine, with fresh softs all around him. He's not got much of a chance of fighting back against any of them. Domenico Lovecchio, by the way, further up the order, he's very close behind Josh Idowu now, who's struggling on his 20-lap-old medium tyres. I wonder if Josh is going to struggle to make it to the end of the race. If so, he should have pitted several laps ago when Caraton and Donoso did. Now he's going to have lost a whole hatful of time to those guys. Ben Sakhir getting past Felipe and up into ninth. Critical move for him. He needs to stay with Andy and Joglar up ahead. Both of them are now 3 seconds behind Krutic and Dario Yamulo, though, who they're in a straight battle with as Felipe loses out to Caraton as well. And it's going to be really interesting because now Alvaro Caraton, Fabrizio Donoso, they've got fresher tyres than Sakhir, Andy, Joglar, but not by very much at all. So they don't really have that much of an advantage here.
Yeah, and it's what we were saying before, you know, the first few laps when you put on those fresh soft tyres, you'll be quicker than those who have been on those soft tyres for a few laps. But give it, 20 laps when those soft tyres are at the end of their life, then you'll start to notice a slight advantage. This group of cars goes all the way up to Pablo Joglar in P7. Also, Patrick Krutic, 8.8 seconds behind Domenico Lovecchio. Domenico Lovecchio currently stuck behind Josh Idowu, who's losing about half a second a lap to the likes of Jarno Otmir. I think Patrick Krutic and Dario Yamulo get P3 and P4 here. Well, actually P4 and P3 because Patrick Krutic has a time penalty. So I don't think Dario Yamulo will actually try to battle with Patrick. They'll just try to work together.
You'd have thought so, yeah. If Dario Yamulo is sensible, I think that would be the right thing to do, depending on if Krutic can keep a level of pace that Dario thinks is acceptable. Here now comes Domenico Lovecchio getting past Josh Idowu, who cannot do anything on those worn-out medium tyres. The similarly aged, but rather less worn hard tyres on Domenico Lovecchio's Racing Point now paying dividends. The decision to go onto the hard seemed like a bit of an odd one at the time, but now Lovecchio is reaping the benefits as Jarno Otmir and Alessio Di Capua, their mediums, are going to be really struggling if they're trying to make it to the end of the race on those as well. Alvaro Caraton battling further down the order with Ben Sakhir and actually getting past the Renault driver there. Benz wants to have another go, but Alvaro has the outside line and therefore the better run onto this back straight. And so up into ninth he goes. Critical that he makes progress through these similarly aged soft tyre runners, as now Ben Sakhir is at Aroc, sending it up the inside of the Renault driver and maybe taking advantage there. Around the outside of turn 6 he goes, but he loses the inside line for 7, and as a result the Renault shuts the door, pushes him out wide, but they're not done yet.
Yeah, Felipe on 22 lap worn hard tyres, just desperately trying to stay within DRS range, desperately trying to tag along so that if there is an incident, he could be finding himself picking up the final point, but I think that's going to be difficult when he's got Fabrizio Donoso hot on his heels with a fresh set of soft tyres as well. Fabrizio will fly past down the inside and get the job done. As simple as that.
And Fabrizio's position relative to Alvaro Carreton is not great right now. Not only does Fabrizio have that 3-second time penalty, but when they both came into the pits, Fabrizio had a lot more traffic to get past than Alvaro has, and Alvaro has made lighter work of the traffic that he has had to pass thus far. Case in point, here he goes up the inside of Pablo Joglar, and he can retake the racing line before even getting into the braking zone. So, another easy move then for the Spaniard, who's up into 8th. Andy ahead, if he can just get past the Ferrari driver, and you'd have to imagine he's going to be able to do that, maybe even at the end of the start of the next lap. Then he has 4 seconds of clean air to pump in fastest lap after fastest lap of the race, you'd have to imagine. And he might even be in with a shout of getting back on the podium here with this 2-stop strategy.
And I'll tell you what, Patrick Crute is currently 6 seconds behind Josh Idowu, closing in at a rapid rate of knots. We know Josh Idowu's tyres are really struggling at the present point. And a look in the background, Ben Sabukonyi having a look at Arox's Pablo Joglar, has a look at Alvaro Carreton around the outside. Goes Sabukonyi over turn 1, side by side, then through 2. Sabukonyi again on the outside through 3. Should be able to carry more momentum and get onto the power slightly earlier. But Arox is defending. This is a DRS straight, so it will make things slightly difficult as Alvaro Carreton goes down the inside of Andy. Late on the brakes is Sabukonyi. He tries to hold it around the outside of 5. Will have the inside for 6. No switches back. And he's just searching for any form of a gap so that he can send one up the inside of the AlphaTauri.
Fantastic, lively driving here from Ben Sabukonyi. You can tell he is very upset with Arox having pushed past him a couple of laps ago, and he wants to get straight back past the Norwegian. He can't quite do it right now. Arox does have time penalties as well, which Ben Sabukonyi does not. But Bence is going to be very aware of his teammate Fabrizio Donoso bearing down on the pair of them behind on slightly fresher, only slightly fresher, soft tyres. Definitely one of the fastest drivers on this circuit today, Fabrizio Donoso. Ben Sabukonyi will be feeling a bit vulnerable with that man in his rear view mirror. Dario Yamula getting very, very close behind Patrick Crute right now. There might be a move happening between those two. Here it is, the Alfa Romeo sending it up the inside of turn 5. We didn't see many moves into turn 5 at the start of the race, but in the last few laps, it's been the place of choice for overtakes.
Yeah, and it's a really good move as well from Dario. He does it in a way right when he's close to Patrick, so he doesn't have to burn too much ERS, and as a result, he gets a pass nice and easily without costing either of them a time. And Patrick is aware of this. He knows, he's not battling with Dario for position because he has a 3-second time penalty. So he's just going to slot him behind. He's going to save up some ERS, which is currently fairly low, and now these two can work together. Now that Dario will have more ERS, this will just allow them to pull even closer to Josh Idowu. 13 laps remaining here at Bahrain short for round 7 of the ORL Season 14 Championship.
Time running out for some of these guys on the soft tyres as they're looking to try and mount a crusade against the front 4 on their old mediums and hards. But Alessio Di Capua, Jarno Opmeer, they're holding strong in terms of pace right now. Alvaro Carreton maybe a little bit faster than on track, but only a little bit faster. Alvaro, ever since he got past Andy, has not exactly torn into the gap between himself and Patrick Crute, which we expected him to do. Here are the two AlphaTauris who started at the very back of the grid, now battling over 9th and 10th, so they can be pretty happy with the way the race has gone thus far. It's Arox making the move on Pablo Joglar, who now will find Ben Sabukonyi buzzing around in his mirror in that yellow and black Renault. So it's two AlphaTauris from 2 Renaults in 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. And then a bit of a gap to Felipe, who's kind of limping home on those hards.
Yeah, and Arox goes defensive. Pablo Joglar will look for the outside, and Andy's just loving seeing this in his rear view mirror. These guys battling as all. Very late on the brakes, so was Arox. And he almost runs into the back of Andy in a similar way to how Danny Haddad lost his front wing on the side of Alessio Di Capua.
Indeed, yeah. And now, Ben Sabukonyi might be able to think about a move on Pablo Joglar. He tried around the outside of one AlphaTauri round here a couple of laps ago. Couldn't quite work from this time. And, yeah, he couldn't get alongside. So it is just going to be down in 11th for the Hungarian for the time being. But you can see it's a little bit faster than than Pablo Joglar right now, I should say. He'll be wanting to get past before too long so that he can continue his battle with Arox, who's starting to gap Pablo Joglar by just a little bit. It's about 6.5 tenths between the two of them. for the time being. Jarno Otmir getting pretty close to Alessio Di Caprio at the front. That's closer than he has been for a fair few laps.
Yeah, currently 5 tenths behind, and Jarno Otmir with the fresher tyres. You know he's just waiting. He's just biding his time. And actually, if we just take a quick look, I just want to see Jarno Otmir, pretty much a full battery of ERS, sitting at about 80%. And for Alessio Di Caprio, he's down to about 40%. So I think it's just a matter of time. Jarno Otmir is just playing the patient game, just sitting behind, just waiting. And when there's a couple of laps left, he'll pull the trigger. And he'll try to claim yet another win, his 3rd win of the season, as Arsene Cardinal picks up a time penalty, the 5th driver of the race to take a time penalty. Dario Iamolo currently 3 seconds behind Joshi Doru, so still closing the gap, and Alvaro Carreton almost within that critical 3-second range to Patrick Krutich.
It's desperate stuff right now for Fabrizio Donoso. Currently not on track to score a point. He's got a penalty in his pocket. This two-stop strategy has not worked at all for the Chilean driver. He's one of the fastest in this field. He was in that front battle with Alessio Di Caprio, Jarno Otmir, Alvaro Carreton, all those guys. And now he's down in 12th behind his teammate Ben Sabacon. He can't make an imprint because there's a DRS train up ahead and everyone's on pretty much the same age of soft tyres. So he's just stuck down there in 12th, which is really, really disastrous. The strategy call for a two-stop has not worked out for him, and it's not really worked out for Alvaro Carreton either. Has a bit more time to make it work, does the Spaniard, currently sitting in 7th and with a bit of clean air. He's getting closer to Yemulo and Krutich, who themselves are getting closer to Josh Idowu, but Alvaro Carreton's not getting closer at the rate that he would like, and he might still be looking at a 7th or maybe 6th place finish here. And when you consider his pace, that's going to be disappointing.
Well, you have to remember that as things stand, it's going to be Jarno Otmir who leads the championship from Patrick Krutich, Alvaro Carreton in P3, and Danny Haddad, well, having an absolute terrible day. This could have been a fantastic opportunity if Yoni Tormala was racing, as Arrows has to think about the inside of Andy. Not quite late enough on the race, nor brave enough. Slots him behind, sensible stuff. Dario Iamolo is now 2.2 seconds behind Josh Idowu. Things are heating up in the battle for P3. And Domenico Lovecchia has almost pulled a second to Josh Idowu. If he is able to pull that second, it will mean that Dario Iamolo can essentially just hopscotch his way past Josh Idowu, while Josh doesn't have a DRS as we have a yellow flag. Is that going to be a potential safety car to add some drama? I do not think it will do.
That's Arsene Cardinal retiring from the race. I think he's coming to the pits to retire again. So another driver deciding his race is run. He has no opportunity to score any decent points. Haddad getting past Gatton for 15th and 16th, the final 2 slots. Credit to Haddad for continuing at it with this race, but without a safety car, I don't think he's got too much of a hope of points. And even if he does have a safety car, he probably still doesn't have too much of a hope either. Here's Arox taking a look at Andy. Josh Idowu picking up a 3-second time penalty. That's going to leave him very, very vulnerable indeed to Dario Iamolo. So now the Italian doesn't even need to get past Josh Idowu to claim 4th position away, but I'm sure he'll want to get past regardless so that he can move on up and try and get past Domenico Lovecchia and snagging himself a place on the podium. His 2nd podium in ORL, that would be for Dario Iamolo, who, let's not forget, had a pretty poor qualifying. Was down there well outside the top 10, save for Patrick Krutich, but they have made this contra strategy work very, very well for them.
Yeah, and you don't even know as well when you look at the qualifying times if that was, you know, their ultimate pace, or if they were trying to qualify just outside of the top 10. I mean, with the likes of Ben Sabaconi, he's around that kind of pace, you know, being 10th, 11th. So you don't know if he probably wants to be starting in P11, but you don't know if he was sandbagging at all to be able to qualify on in a more ideal strategical position, and it could have been the same for the likes of Dario Iamolo. But that penalty for Josh Idowu, that's going to cost him, and I think that will actually help out Alvaro Carreton, who is still closing in. He's now 3.1 seconds behind Patrick Krutich. So back outside of that range to leapfrog the Mercedes driver, and this is looking to be an absolute fantastic result for Mercedes once again.
Certainly, yeah. But Krutich does have to worry about Carreton and Andy behind. Potentially, if they can get within that 3-second margin, Krutich might be losing out to them due to his penalties. Alvaro Carreton has been stagnating at about 3.2, 3.1 seconds behind the Polish driver, though. Not really getting any closer at this stage of the race. And Sabacogni close behind Pablo Hoglard, but they're all in a DRS train, and overtaking is oh so difficult when you're in that sort of scenario, unless, of course, you are Jarno Otmir, who made light work of several of those guys earlier on in a similar sort of situation. Alessio Di Capua still leading this race, as here is Dario Yamulo losing out to Patrick Krutage, the Mercedes driver getting past. I was not expecting that, but nicely done by the pole, who once again regains supremacy in that race-long battle between these two. But surely they will need to be working together here to close up to Joshua Dowu and get past. Patrick will be particularly eager to get past Joshua Dowu because that will mean he will actually finish ahead of the Welshman, given that they both have a penalty in their pocket.
And what you'll usually see with regards to DRS trains is drivers will sit behind each other, but when they're about to close into within a second of a car ahead, that's when they'll pounce, that's when they'll make their move. Because once they've made their move, it'll be harder for the guy behind it to re-overtake them, due to the fact that they will then have a DRS themselves. And Patrick Krutage is now 1.4 seconds behind Joshua Dowu. If he can find out 4/10 in the next lap, he'll be able to make this work. Look at the DRS. Dario Yamulo is now down to about 30%. And Patrick Krutage, he's actually down to about 20%. So Patrick Krutage unable to save any DRSs in the background. We're seeing the cars snaking their way down the straight. Ben Sabacogni has a look down the inside. He gets his front end chopped off. Fabrizio Donoso taps into his rear as well. And Donoso will throw it down the inside into the right-hander. Will force Ben Sabacogni off circuit. But Ben does not care. He'll put the power down nonetheless. And he is forced to slot in behind us up ahead. We're seeing Arox throwing it down the inside of Andy. Will squeeze the Ferrari wide, and that will mean Pablo Hoglar can find a way through. This is the battle for the final few points on the circuit. And, well, the driver's definitely desperate to claim those final points.
Arox acting as the bludger there for AlphaTauri, knocking Andy out of the way so Pablo Hoglar could get past, but I suppose the AlphaTauri team won't mind that too awfully much. Arox does already have a penalty to his name anyway, and Andy, he'll be feeling pretty sore about that one. His face might well be as red as his car right now, but he's just going to channel that frustration and try and get back past Pablo Hoglar. He's also going to be very careful for Fabrizio Donoso, who's in very close attendance and tried to send the move, and somehow, I cannot understand how he's ended up in that position, but he's gone off on the exit of turn 1, and that is it for his chance for points in this race. I cannot fathom exactly what move he would have done to have that happen to him.
I think he tried to sweep one way and then sweep back to the outside on the rear end of Andinator. And I think his front right part of the wing must have touched the rear of Andy's car, which is what sent him spinning. Either way, though, we have more pressing matters at hand, which involves Patrick Krutage on the back of Joshua Dowu, Jarno Otmir closing in onto Alessio Di Capua. So both Mercedes are looking to pounce now as we are about to start lap 55 or 57. We've already started it. Alessio Di Capua leading the way, but here comes Patrick Krutage. Joshua Dowu will not even defend, and here comes Dario Yamulo to join the fight. Dario Yamulo might just take a 2-in-1 go. No, slots in behind the Mercedes. He knows that Patrick Krutage has a time penalty, and he knows that he doesn't have to do anything overly rash in the final 3 laps of the race.
Yeah, they haven't got much time to catch up to Domenico Lavecce either, who, let's not forget, is on hard tyres. So he's not going to be in anywhere near as much trouble as Joshua Dowu was when they caught up to the rear end of the Welshman in the McLaren. Alessio Di Capua, Jarno Otmir still holding very, very strong out at the front, but Jarno Otmir is closer to Alessio Di Capua now. He's only 1/4 of a second behind. And actually, he might even be thinking about making a move into the final corner. He's going to stick in behind. That's sensible. He's going to wait for the DRS. But right now, it's a golden opportunity for Jarno to take the lead as they enter the penultimate lap of the race.
Alessio Di Capua will go defensive. He wants to hold on to this position. It will be tricky, but Jarno Otmir will fly past, goes defensive as Alessio looks to the outside. Let's go. We have a battle on our hands. Alessio Di Capua, though, look at his ERS down to 20%. Jarno Otmir has about 70. He is going to absolutely bomb it on this lap behind. Dario Yamulo has been able to find a way past Patrick Krutage, who is now over a second ahead of Joshua Dowu. So Dario Yamulo still has a chance to be able to secure a podium position. It is Italian 2, 3, 4 at the moment.
Yeah, the Italians coming out very, very strong in this race. Dario Yamulo will be closing down Domenico Lavecce to the end of this race, but I doubt he'll be able to get past him. We'll have to wait and see. The time is running out, though, for Yemulo right now. Jarno Opmeer, look how much he's been able to gap Alessio Di Capua. You can just see it on your screen right now. Jarno Opmeer was holding something back. As always, he had an ace up the sleeve, and he's got past Alessio Di Capua. We're on to the final lap. Alessio's not close enough to make the move, and as a result, Jarno might just have this win bought and paid for. Here is Alvaro Caraton. He's going to dispatch Josh Idowu as well, so at least he will reclaim one of the guys he was battling with before opting for the two-stop strategy. Josh Idowu falling down into 7th with those very old medium tyres. Meanwhile, Patrick Krutic will not let Dario Yemulo steal a place on the podium. After the battling they've been having all race long, he wants to give one final frustration to the Alfa Romeo, forcing him back down into 5th for now.
Yeah, he wants the honour of taking P4 on a circuit. Domenico Lovecchia does not have any time penalties. Patrick Krutic will drop behind Dario Yemulo and Alvaro Caraton. He might actually drop behind Pablo Hogla as well. He doesn't want to be battling in terms of position, but he still wants the honour, track honour. Either way, Jarno Opmeer through the final corner. Fabrizio Donoso will set the fast lap of the race on fresh softs, but it is Jarno Opmeer who claims his 3rd win of the season from Alessio Di Capua. Domenico Lovecchia through the final corner will take a well-earned P3. Patrick Krutic, P4 on circuit, will get jumped by Dario Yemulo and Alvaro Caraton. Not so by Arox or Pablo Hogla, who claims their P7. Ben Sabaconi in P9, and Arox claims the final point as Josh Idowu outside of the points. Can you believe it?
Josh Idowu finishing outside of the points. That is a nightmare for him. That's all on penalties and the pace he lost on that last lap. I don't think he picked up a puncture, but he did get passed by Arox on the final lap, and he was really losing time so much in those last 3 or 4 laps. The medium tyres, he was just asking a couple of laps too much of them, and in the end, they gave up on him almost entirely. Down into 11th he goes. After such a strong race in general, he'll be feeling very, very unhappy with that one. I gotta say, I got it right about the Jarno Opmeer win, but my prediction for the podium has not come off very well. Alvaro Caraton in 5th, Josh Idowu down in 11th, and Daniele Haddad, who I was thinking about putting 3rd, down in 14th.
Yeah, for some of the mainstay names in the championship, Alvaro Caraton, Fabrizio Donoso, is usually up there. Danny Haddad all having bad races. Even Alvaro Caraton, we know how hard Alvaro is on himself after races, and if we do get to speak to him, I'm sure he will be conveying that. But Jarno Opmeer with a 3rd win of the season, having not participated in the first 3 races. After round 7, leads the championship once again, just like he did throughout the entirety of season 13. And, well, now you'd have to think it's going to be plain sailing for the Mercedes esports driver.
It may well be, but this race, it wasn't that easy. It wasn't easy for Jarno Opmeer. He did have to make a lot of stuff happen in this race to take the win, but you always felt like he had it in his pocket against Alessio Di Capua. Alessio is such a fast driver. He took pole position and Jarno Opmeer didn't, but at the end, the way he just gapped him on that final lap told me that Jarno Opmeer could have finished a couple of seconds up the road if he'd really wanted to, but really well done. A tactical drive, of course, from Jarno Opmeer, and I thought when he came into the pits so late for that set of softs, I thought he might have thrown it away. I didn't bank on the fact that several other drivers were two-stopping, but nevertheless, he did a great job of getting up through that traffic, getting through that DRS train like it was nothing as well. Very, very impressive drive.
A fantastic drive from Jarno Opmeer to claim a win. Alessio Di Capua back in form, in fine form, claiming P2 with Domenico Lovecchia, rounding out your podium positions. And on that note, we're going to be heading into a short break, and we will then be jumping in with our post-race interview. Stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the post-race show. We've just had round 7 of the season here at Bahrain Short, and well, it was a thrilling race, and I wouldn't say it was a I don't know if it was a Jarno masterclass, but Jarno was able to take the win. And with that, I think we have our first interviewees joining in. We have Alessio Di Capua and Alvaro Caraton joining. So I think we can. I'll start off with Alessio. Alessio, can you hear us?
Yes, mate, I can hear.
Ok, Alessio, questa volta devi parlare veloce, davvero?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I was
Okay.
as quick as possible.
You had you had pressure from Jarno behind. Did you think you could hold him behind in those final few laps?
Maybe with a fresher tire, yes, mate. But at the last lap, my tires were on 78% of degradation, and Jarno had 3 laps pressure tire on, and it's been a bit difficult to hold him behind. I hope until the last moment to take a second attack, and but yeah, at the end my pace was 5-6 tenths lower than him, and yeah. Apart of that, really good race, a really good qualifying. Finally, pole position again, and to lead the race for a long time, and yeah, in the last lap I was terrific. And yeah, what can I say? At least I'm back on top in qualifying and on podium, and yeah, good race.
Well, Alessio, it's fantastic to see you back in form. Final question: Did you ever think to let Jarno through towards the end, just so that you could sit behind him and save up ERS like he did to you?
Sorry, Nick, repeat that.
Did you ever think to let Jarno through so you could sit behind him and maybe try to save up some ERS and have a go at him in the final few laps?
Yeah, I think sometimes, but I also thought if I let Jarno go, maybe Jarno can take advantage of that lap with slipstream and DRS for put me throw me out of the second, and yeah, I can't allow that. And I tried it. Not,
Well, Alessio, fantastic job on the P2. We look forward to seeing you in action in Belgium. And Jacob, I believe you have Alvaro Caraton at the ready.
Thanks, Nate.
Sorry about that. I forgot I had my mic muted. Hello, Alvaro.
Yeah, hello, good night.
Hey, yeah. So let's start with qualifying then. Thinking back to qualifying, you're going to have to remind me exactly where you were on the grid. Am I thinking third? Is that right?
Yeah, P3.
Yeah, third on the grid. Right. So how were you feeling about that? Were you disappointed not to be on the front row? Or were you happy to be all the way up in third?
To be honest, with only 1 day of practice, it felt really good. Mm-hmm. And the point is that I missed completely the strategy and finished 11 seconds behind the winner. So that's it.
Yeah, no, I did. I was again, getting onto the race then, thinking about that strategy. Was a 2-stop something you were always planning on doing from the very beginning?
Yeah, I thought on doing 2-stop because it would be a fun race, and maybe it was the better option, but at the end it showed that it wasn't. I had good pace in the first thing with softs, so I could have just sit behind Jarno and pit in the same lap as him and fight for the win, but I didn't do that, so yeah.
So yeah, maybe a lot of drivers don't have so much experience with the short circuits, in particular Bahrain short as well. You mentioned not having too much practice, so I guess these sorts of mistakes can happen. At what point did you realize that it was a mistake that you had made?
When I was already with mediums.
Right.
Because I knew I wouldn't go to the end of the race, and I needed to pit. So when I saw Jarno only 3 seconds behind me with 10 laps of tire difference, the race was already over. So yeah.
But then when we talk about your after you pitted, I mean, you and Fabrizio pitted on the same lap, but you made a lot better progress up through the traffic and reclaiming a solid finishing position in the end. Was it at least fun battling up through there? Are you happy with how you did on that final soft tire stint? Do you think you got the maximum out of it?
Yeah, I overtook many drivers, but at the end, as I fought with many of them, I got no ERS to keep progressing. I'm close to Patrick and Dominic, so yeah, it's okay.
Well, fair enough. But well, I will say congratulations on a decent result, but I'm sure you would have rather been up there at the very top. But congratulations nevertheless.
Cheers.
Great to hear from Alvaro. Next up, we have Patrick Krutic, who was able to take a P6. And Patrick, you came into this round as championship leader. You pulled off the alternate strategy. It was so good. I have to ask, though, where did you get the time penalty from?
I got 2 very unfair warnings, so I will try to make sure that I don't have this penalty at the end. Because one of them was just by avoiding Daniele Haddad, who was just sliding, like nearly spinning in front of me, and second, I lost like 1 second because of it and still got the warning. So I believe I should get a P4, but we will see. So yeah, the race was very good. Yeah, starting from P14, again, my quali was disaster. I just cannot explain what is happening with the quali, with my qualies. But yeah, in the races, I still feel comfortable. So yeah, the alternate, the other strategy, the starting on the medium tires and then going to the soft was a very good strategy, and I was saving the tires. So in the end, I was fighting with the guys who thought that I have a penalty, and they were a bit too easy for me. So that was the strat till the end. So just to make sure that they think that I have a penalty. But hopefully, I'm hoping that obviously this penalty will be removed, but we will see.
Well, I actually wanted to bring that up because you and Dario Yamullo were on the same strategy, and you seem to be working together very well. Like there didn't seem to be pretty much any battling between you. Like every now and then you change positions, but you wouldn't defend. You worked together. I just wanted to ask, did you ever think, because right at the end you started battling with Dario when Alvaro was about 2.8 seconds behind, I think. Did you ever think, okay, maybe I won't battle just in case the penalty doesn't get removed so I can hold on to P4 or P5? And the other question that I wanted to ask is, do you think that you had the pace to maybe catch up to Domenico Lavecchia and take third?
So the first question, yeah, we work really well together. At one stage, I think on one lap, I just overshoot the braking and I just hit him. So we lost a second from this good work. Yeah, we were just doing that just to make sure we will not lose the time. So we were overtaking every 5 laps each other. So it was good. But then at the end, yeah, I was pretty confident that my penalty will be removed. So I was just fighting hard to make sure I can finish ahead of him. So yeah, it's now down to the stewards to investigate this. And the second question, could I catch Dominic?
Yeah, do you think you could have caught up to Lavecchia?
Yeah, maybe. The first stint wasn't ideal still. I was struggling with sliding a lot. The second stint was very, very good. So maybe if I improved my first stint and didn't lose that much time at some laps, then maybe, yes, I would have got him. So yeah, it was just down to the, I think, first stint and maybe wrong strategy with overtaking at the final laps, overtaking Shazu, the Alfa Romeo guy.
Yeah, Dario.
I forgot his name. Sorry, mate.
That was Dario.
Yeah, Dario, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, maybe if the first team was better.
Well, either way, Patrick, congrats on the result, and I guess whether if your penalty does get removed, you'll be second in the championship, and if it doesn't, you'll be third behind Alvaro. what's the target for you now? As final question, is it is it still a part of you that thinks maybe I can win the championship, or is it now just to try to hold on to that second place spot?
Well, Jarno is in a different championship. He should have a separate championship table. So yeah, I can win the championship if Jarno is not driving. So no, I mean, I still hope I can hold on to hold on to podium basically. So I think podium is a very realistic target for me.
Okay. Well, best of luck with that target. We look forward to seeing you in action next week in Belgium. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us for this.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And on that note, that is everything that we do have time for tonight. It's been a pleasure to bring you the races. This has been the Online Racing League. You can catch up and stay up to date with everything Online Racing League related over on Twitter at @team_ORL. You can catch me on Twitter at MilkyCyril73, and you can find Jacob on Twitter at JHancocksCaster. Did I get it right this time?
You did, yeah, it was perfect. Well done.
So, thank you guys very much for tuning in. We'll be back next week for round 8 at Spa-Francorchamps for the Belgian Grand Prix. Until then, stay fast and good night.